Welcome to Our Girl Relationships. On this channel, we discuss day-to-day problems people face in their lives. Let's start with the video. As a child, whenever I was invited to people's houses, my mom told me it was etiquette to eat the food they made. She would always tell me to put a considerable amount and eat all of it since it would be rude not to. First, she said it would be wasting food, and second, it would seem as if I didn't enjoy the food. Which is mean since a lot of effort was put into making it. I've always followed this rule and thought it was true. If I cooked a buttload of food and no one ate, I'd be heartbroken. My boyfriend of 7 months invited me to his family Christmas dinner. I've met his parents very briefly, but nothing too formal. Anyway, we get to the food and I was pretty hungry and everything looked really amazing. I made sure to fill my plate, but not overfill, just equal amounts of everything on the table. I ate it all and to be honest, it was pretty stuffed. His mother then asked me if I wanted seconds. There was still a lot of food on the table. I took her up on the offer and put a bit more of pasta salad. My boyfriend did give me a strange look, but I thought nothing of it at the time. Dessert came and I chose to eat a slice of cheesecake. We then had coffee, all sitting around the fire and telling funny stories. Everyone seemed to be in a good mood and everything was great. After everything, I was honestly so happy because I was worried about dinner and meeting his parents, but I thought that everything went well. We left his parents' house in separate cars as I came directly from my parents' house to him. We reached my apartment and I can tell he's totally mad at me. I asked him what was wrong and he just blew up in my face that I had no manners, telling me that he had never seen me eat as much as I did at his parents' house and that it was so embarrassing. After further prying, he said that in his culture, when you eat a lot at a person's house, it is disrespectful because you should never go to a house on an empty stomach. He said it makes a person look desperate and there's a language barrier between me and him. And he said in a way fat, but not fat. Honestly, I don't understand. He said on the car ride home, his mom was talking about how embarrassing and unmannered I was to eat so much. I told him she told me to put seconds and he said that's done to be a good hostess, but a guest should never take up on that offer. He said it would have been fine if I had declined dessert, but because I had not done that, I looked even more fat. I explained to him my reasoning and he called that bullcrap. I honestly feel terrible, but told him if he explained to me beforehand, I wouldn't have eaten so much. But he said he thought it was common knowledge. It's been 2 days and neither of us will really talk until the other apologizes. I know it's petty to not apologize, but I sincerely don't think I did anything wrong. But I guess that's why I'm here. Edit. I've been debating whether to reveal where my boyfriend is from. I do not want to put any disrespect on his culture or receive offensive comments from where he's from, but I have been receiving a lot of comments, so his whole family is Arab. I'm Mexican, but I'm not saying that all Arabs follow this rule. Really, I do not know, so please refrain from anything hateful. Not the a-hole. You're being gaslighted. In no damn culture I know of being invited to dinner that no one eats. What the F is dinner for if all the guests do is sit there and politely decline? Your mom is absolutely right. If the host brings you to dinner, you eat a little of everything even if you don't like it to show gratitude and appreciation. Now flip that as a host. You want your guests to eat and be full. Food should be shared and a meal is so much better when shared versus eaten alone. Yeah, I would have reservations about this guy. He's calling you fat while not saying it directly. Not the a-hole, and quite frankly, his family sounds petty. That's some passive-aggressive nonsense to make tons of food, pass around seconds and desserts, but talk crap because people accept it. It sounds like his culture is centered around socioeconomic status, so they cook all of this food to show off, but see it as desperate when people actually eat it. In my culture, it's also rude to refuse food. So, he's being an a-hole by thinking only his culture matters and that it's common sense, when you're clearly not from the same culture. Then instead of defending you and making this point to his mom, he's embarrassed and gets mad at you. When someone has to keep up appearances in front of their own family, that's not a good sign that they're genuine people. Run and be glad you saw his true colors early on. Next story. This happened a few weeks ago, but my 30 male wife, 30 female, is still upset about it. So I'm bringing this to Reddit. My company had a Christmas party a few weeks ago and employees were allowed to bring their significant others. It was a fairly fancy event and everyone was expected to dress up. When my wife came downstairs ready to get into the car and go to the restaurant where the event was being held, she was wearing appropriate clothing for a fancy dinner. but she was wearing her glasses. I gently asked if she would mind putting on contact lenses just for the night, since this was a fancy event. She looked shocked, and she didn't understand why she would need to put on contacts. My wife has terrible eyesight and wears glasses every day, but will put on contacts if she's doing something like skiing or surfing or playing sports. But she also usually puts on contacts for special occasions like the one we're about to go to. I reminded her of this, and she said she didn't want to put contacts in and asked continuously if I'm attracted to her when she wears glasses. But after some back and forth, she begrudgingly agreed to put on contacts. Well, when we got to the restaurant, co-workers and their significant others were walking around the room mingling, and my wife turned to me fuming. She immediately noticed that several women were wearing glasses, and she went off about how she couldn't believe that I had the audacity to force her to put on contacts when clearly no one at the event gave a crap. I guess asking her to wear contacts led her to believe that no one else in the room would be wearing glasses, even though I never said that. I just wanted her to look her best at this important work event. I really don't get why this is blown up the way it has. This happened over 2 weeks ago, and my wife is still acting cold towards me and making remarks under her breath that I'm an a-hole and that I don't find her attractive. I don't think I'm an a-hole, and I think she's being ridiculous and insecure, but she will not let go of this. Am I the a-hole? You're the a-hole. She felt good in what she was. You tried to control how she handled her medical condition and eyesight because you thought she would look better in front of your colleagues without her glasses. Super rude, super wrong, especially when other women were wearing them. Now she feels like it wasn't about the event, it was about you and how you saw her. I don't know what you need to do to fix this, but it's not going to be easy. Good luck to her. It's her body. It's her glasses. She feels ugly now and something she needs to see. It's despicable that her husband made her feel like that. Next story. My 27 female, husband 29 male got married 8 years ago. My husband's family is very old-fashioned. They believe that a woman should stay at home with the kids and basically be a slave to her husband. My husband does not like that, so I'm the breadwinner for our family while my husband stays at home and takes care of the kids. 7 female, 5 male, 2 female, and house. My husband is Latino and I'm white. This has never been a problem for either of us before, but it has for his family. His mom has always commented on how our children take after me and had even said quite a few times that she believes I cheated on her son because all of our kids look like me, the most, skin tone, hair, eyes. When our last child, 4 months, was born, it was obvious that he would take after my husband in the looks department. Because of COVID, we hadn't introduced our families to our son until yesterday. This is where the problem was. The first thing my mother-in-law said when she saw my son was, "Oh, my first real grandbaby." This caused issues, but my husband told her not to say it again and we let it go. However, she kept commenting in front of our children how our son was her favorite grandchild. She was being all around rude to the rest of the children. My husband finally snapped and told her our son wasn't her only grandchild and she needed to stop acting like she was or we were leaving. She then said, "Those white children are not my grandkids, and I doubt they're yours. Heaven knows your wife is probably cheating while she's at her job, and you should get a job and make her stay at home." This is where I might be the a-hole. I told her if that's how she truly felt, then she won't be a part of the children's lives and took my children to the car and went home. She hasn't stopped messaging saying we can't take her grandbaby from her. My husband said I was an a-hole for telling her she can't be around our kids anymore and that she just needs time to adjust. His family also thinks I'm being the a-hole. So am I the a-hole for telling my mother-in-law she can't see her grandkids? Edit. I'm going to take a few people's advice and get paternity tests for all of my kids and mail them to her. Edit 2. Someone brought up my husband taking the kids to mother-in-law's while I was at work and right now I'm on vacation. And after that, I'll talk to my boss about working from home. Not the a-hole. Does she need time to adjust? Let's see, your oldest is 7, so she already had 7 years to adjust. I don't think that is going to happen anytime soon, ever. Also, has your husband and the rest of the family noticed that she's only upset because you can't take her grandbaby from her? Notice the singular, not grandbabies, meaning the other 4 children, just the one that she accepts as hers. You know, the one that you didn't cheat on your husband? Oh my God, you cannot let her come near the youngest, the one that she cares about. No good can come from that. She will tell him that you cheated on your husband with the others. There will be a huge rift between him and your other children. This cannot turn out well. Next story. My husband and I have known each other for a good majority of our lives because we met when we were in our early childhood years and lost contact throughout our teens, and then reunited again as adults and fell in love, which resulted in us getting married not late after. I guess it was very sad and abrupt for not knowing each other to reuniting again and announcing to our families that we were engaged, but my family's side got rather decently and congratulated me wholeheartedly for my upcoming joys. One person that seemed to oppose without attempting to hide anything was my mother-in-law, who flat out got up and walked out of the room when my husband and I announced to her our engagement. What shocked me was the fact that before our engagement and before we started dating, she was madly in love with the idea of becoming a single family with my mother and now deceased father and I. I assumed it was because of jealousy. A reaction like that is expected from each mother whose son starts dating with the intention of marrying and starting a family of his own. I didn't break any problems or trigger her any more than she already was. Only difference between before the engagement and after was that now she was flat out telling me that I was inadequate to date her son and incompetent in comparison to him and his career. Overall, unfit to neither be his girlfriend nor his wife, certainly not a part of their family. She would even complain about me to my mother, who was close friends with her a long time before my husband and I started dating. She will talk about how she disliked me and found me incompatible with my husband to my own mother. Absolutely mental. Recently, my mom got really sick with lung cancer and was supposed to survive, or if it wasn't because she got infected with this stupid virus going around. When my mother was severely ill and hospitalized for more than 3 weeks, my mother-in-law didn't even care to call me or come to the hospital and visit her close friend and the mother of her daughter-in-law. She is extremely disrespectful towards me and the value I had always given to my relationship with her, because she knew how close my mother and I were and how appreciative I was of her presence in my life, especially after my father passed away. One thing she did, which only infuriated me even more, was to call my husband and ask him if my mother had passed away yet. Yes, she asked my husband if my mom had passed away, instead of what state her health and or how well she's recovering. That genuinely made me cry because it was the thing that made me realize that I was in a state of oblivion and active ignorance of the fact that my mother's life was ending soon. After my mother's passing and during one of the most difficult time in my life, mother-in-law approached me and asked me if it was okay for her to stay at my parents' home alongside me for a couple of weeks so I could get the closure I needed and heal from the emotional bones that my dad's previous passing and now my mom's left on me. I was still angry at her reaction to my mother's sickness, but the fact that she thought of me and approached me so kindly made me agree to her request almost immediately. Not quite sure if it was because my mother raised me well or if I was your name for a motherly figure, but it seemed like the best thing to do with the time, and little did I know it would be one of the worst decisions I have ever made. It was all part of the plan that I might dare to say she started plotting when my mother fell ill of cancer and then virus that targets the lungs and is still killing people by hundreds each day. As soon as she got all of her things into my house and I started letting her do things such as wash her own clothes or cook meals or go grocery shopping on both of our behalf, she started acting like a motherly figure to me, scolding me and toying me around like a toddler or an infant incapable of setting boundaries or saying no to things. If I had to suspect again, I think the reason she wanted to move into our house was related to her desire to live in it since we met a couple of decades ago. My mom was the one that decorated our home, so whenever my mother-in-law complimented anything about it, my mom would run to me and tell me what she said, sparing me no details. No, I'm sure a person as horrible as someone who would wish death upon their friend for the sake of temporarily moving into their home doesn't exist. I can safely rely on it being a contributing factor in her proposition of helping me. Each time she walked around the house so proud and assertive, I cringed a little bit because it disgusted me to think that she was only taking advantage of my mother's passing. The thing that tipped me off the edge and crossed the line between cringe and borderline hatred was that one time I came back home from visiting my husband in the city he worked at and finding her rummaging through my mother's clothes in her bedroom, trying to find some spare change or cash she had left in her purses. She had previously changed the placement of everything from kitchen utensils to living room decorations under the excuse of not wanting to trigger sentimentally overwhelming memories. True placed the color palette, so I took down the family pictures off the walls and placed them into a box, and even suggested that I help her paint the walls and change their colors entirely. I had been okay with everything, but to find her diving headfirst into my mother's most personal space for the sake of finding an extra minimal sum of money triggered emotions of resentment I didn't even know I possessed. I called my husband in tears, basically overwhelmed by the fact that all of my suspicions had been confirmed, and begged him to come over to his city so we could go stay together at a motel or somewhere she wouldn't find us. My sweet husband, knowing how unbearable his mother is and can be at times, didn't even ask why or try to talk me out of it. I went back to my home and realized that she wasn't there and immediately bought a few locks and locked all possible entrances using keys she wouldn't have access to, leaving all of her belongings and cash and even phone indoors and just walking out, hoping I wouldn't run into her and praying I would never see her face again. I know that she's extremely manipulative and she'll find a place to stay before the sun even sets, but that action that she did that day felt like her spitting on both of my parents' grave and sprinkling salt and lemon on my unhealed wounds, which she came into my life claiming the desire to heal. Not the a-hole. The mother-in-law is a cruel person that shouldn't have been left off the hook for so many years and shouldn't have been allowed the entitlement of getting to do something like this and thinking she would get away with it. Please keep her out of your life and as far away as possible from your future children, because the last thing you want is for her to have any influence on them. You're the a-hole. I understand your feelings and your reasoning behind being hurt and feeling the urge to take revenge, but you should sit through this and talk about it with her instead of locking her out of the house without her belongings or even phone and running away to another city to get cradled by her husband. Sure, she can be manipulative and toxic, and what she did could never be justified, but she's old and rusty and probably won't find a way to get another home or place to stay. And if that happens, you're going to be in for a huge mess that you're probably going to regret later. Not the a-hole. In the beginning and in your interpretation of her actions and reasoning behind disliking her, but you leaving her behind to run away from confronting her or abandoning her homeless and shelterless is a really low blow, even seeing how distraught you were by her actions. She's old and unlovable. Yeah, that gets her rejected and unloved by people, not left out on the streets without any of her belongings.